Hey everyone, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2023 Ford Maverick, we're going to be showing you how to install the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver. Before we get into that though, let's take a minute, we'll check this one out and make sure it's going to work for you. So putting a trailer hitch on a vehicle like the Maverick makes a lot of sense. You know, you'll be able to hook up to your trailer or use those hitch-mounted accessories. First impressions of the hitch, I think it looks pretty decent. For the most part, it's going to be completely hidden, kind of tucked up behind the bumper here. Now the panel that comes on these is a little interesting. It's offset, and so you are able to see one side of the hitch more than the other. But with that said, you can cut this and trim it out to go back in place and kind of hide here. I decided to leave ours off, and that's because we're also going to do trailer wiring. And so once I have the trailer wiring up there, I'll be able to mount up a bracket to our hitch and have our wiring connector right here. So it'll make a little bit more sense and be easy to get to. The hitch is going to have a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, which is a super common size, so a ton of different things will work with it. It is going to use that standard size 5/8 pin and clip. Keep in mind though, one doesn't come with the hitch. If you need one, not a huge deal, get it here at eTrailer. A lot of times too, if you end up buying a new accessory, will come with one. Something to look out for there. As far as the safety chain openings go, easy to get to, relatively large, and you should be able to use pretty much any size hook that your trailer might have on it. The hitch is going to work with all the different models of the Maverick, if you will, meaning if you have a base model up to the fully loaded, if you have a hybrid like we do, or even the standard gas models, this will fit and work out, so nothing to worry about there. And as far as the hitch's weight capacities go, you're gonna have some pretty high numbers. Maximum gross tongue weight rating is gonna be 600, which is the amount of weight pushing down on the hitch. And you should be just fine to use pretty much any size bike rack or cargo carrier, to give you an example there. And for the maximum gross trailer weight rating, that's gonna be 4,000 pounds. That's the amount of weight pulling on the hitch. So that will be the weight of your trailer plus anything that you might have in or on it. This can be used with the weight distribution system, which is a separate component. And what happens when you use that, it's going to keep your Maverick and your trailer level whenever you're towing it down the road. It's pretty popular on campers and enclosed trailers. If that's what you're doing, it might be worth checking out. But even if you use that system, the capacities will remain the same at 600 and 4,000. Now with all that said, I do always like to recommend, always a good idea to grab your Ford's owner's manual. That way you can check in there and make sure that your Maverick can handle that amount of weight safely. We'll grab a couple measurements now, and these will help us figure out what type of accessories are going to work best. So if you go from the ground to the top inside edge of our receiver tube opening, taking into account the lift that we're parked on here, that's going to be about 19 inches. So for those of you pulling a trailer around, chances are pretty good. You can use a ball mount that has a drop in the shank. Probably that 2 to 4 inch range would work well in most situations. And if you go from the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of our rear bumper, that's gonna be about 3 inches, which is really good. So you shouldn't run into too many issues here, but if need be, you can use that to help figure out exactly if any of those folding type accessories that you might have can be stored upright without hitting the back bumper. When it comes down to it, if your Maverick don't already have a hitch on it and you need to pull your trailer or use that accessory, this should work out real well for you. As far as the installation goes, it's really not too bad. You got quite a bit of room to work under here. Everything's pretty straightforward and easy to get to, so you shouldn't really have too many issues with it or take up a bunch of your time, nothing like that. With that in mind though, if you don't feel like messing with this or don't have a place to work on it, something like that, I definitely understand. You can always use our dealer locator network, and hopefully that can help you find a shop in your neighborhood that can handle something like this for you. But why don't we go ahead and get started on this now. To begin our installation, we're going to be underneath the back of our Maverick, and you don't have to do this, but it helps to temporarily lower and remove your spare tire. It gives you a lot more room to work. Ours is actually gone to begin with, so don't really have to worry about anything there. But with that said, we'll start over on our passenger side by removing this underbody panel. Where it meets the frame right here, you're going to have a single push pin style fastener, and you can take a flathead screwdriver, just pry down on the head of the fastener, and then you're able to work the base out with it. And we can grab a 7mm socket, and there's just going to be several of these screws kind of along the whole panel. So we'll work our way around, get them all removed. So it looks to be all of them, and we should be able to just kind of work this out of position and set it off to the side for now. We are going to need to lower our exhaust some to give us clearance to get the hitch up in place and everything. Prior to doing that, I like to take a strap though and just run it from side to side. That way the exhaust will have a little bit of support, and we can kind of help to control how fast and how far we let everything down. Starting here at the tailpipe, we're going to have this hanger, and there's two 10mm head bolts holding it in place. One of them right here, and one right here. If you look at the bottom of your frame rail, you're going to have two bolts here. They're an 18mm head. We need to remove them. And from this point on, whatever we do to one side of our Maverick, we're also going to do to the other side. It's going to be set up the same way. Since we're going to be using these as attachment points for our hitch, it is a good idea just to clean the threads out. Just got a tube brush here, just in case there's any debris or rust or anything inside of there. So get them cleaned out. And for this hole here, that's also going to be an attachment point. We're going to do what's called a reverse fish wire. So you can take the coiled end of the fish wire, put on a spacer block, thread it on a carriage bolt. Then you'll feed the bolt up into place, followed by the spacer block. And you can drop it down like that. As far as what hardware we're going to use for these attachment points, once the hitch is in position, you'll take the included bolt and conical tooth washer. When you put the conical tooth washer on there, make sure that the teeth are sitting on there like this, so it's going to face up towards the hitch. And these are simply just going to thread right into place. When it comes to this panel here, you have a couple options what you can do. You can trim it or completely remove it. My thought is the amount that you have to trim is pretty close to the whole size of the panel. So I think it'll look cleaner overall by just removing it. And then, you know, if you want to come back and cut it later and reinstall it, you can do that. Something to think about too, so if your hitch is sitting here, if you're doing wiring, trailer wiring, and you want to mount up your connector, by removing the whole panel, having this little bit of extra space over here will give you an opening to where you can do that and make it easier to work with. So yeah, you know, if you want to trim, there's a diagram and instructions you can follow. It's pretty thick plastic. I usually use a multi-type tool or an oscillating tool to cut this type of plastic, but Dremel tool, whatever you got. But if you want to remove it, we have two rivets holding this in place. So I'm taking a drill bit that's a little bit larger than the opening there, and we're just going to drill the rivets out. Trying to just drill as little as possible, that way I don't kind of burn up the plastic. That one out. I'll do the same thing for this one here. this little metal bracket that we removed from the frame. We're going to remove it from the rubber isolator hanger. If you're having trouble doing this, you can spray it down with soapy water. Makes it easier sometimes, but that'll just pull right out. We're not going to be reinstalling this, and that's because this, eventually, when our hitch is up there, will go onto a little bracket that's tied into the trailer hitch. If you can grab someone to help you with this part, it makes things much easier. But what you want to do, take the pull wire, drop that down through the corresponding hole in the hitch, and I like to put a little bend in them too, that way they don't pull right back out. But we'll go up and over our exhaust. We'll get everything lined up. Then I'm just going to take the hardware that we talked about to get those started hand tight. As far as this bolt here, what you can do is remove the pull wire. Then you're going to have this flange nut, and it helps if you kind of put some side pressure on the bolt to keep it steady while you thread this on. Once you have all the hardware in place and hand tight, for the bolts here, we'll come back with a 19mm socket, snug those down. Then for this one, you can change that out to an 11/16. You want to make sure and come back with a torque wrench now and tighten down all of the hardware to the amount specified in your instructions. To rehang your exhaust, we're just going to slide that end onto the bracket on our hitch. And now that it's supporting itself, we'll go ahead and get our strap out of the way. You will have to trim out this underbody panel so it'll clear the hitch. There's a diagram and instructions that give you some measurements that you can use to figure that out. And I also like to just hold it up there roughly in place, kind of eyeball it. I think what I'm going to try to do in this case is save this attachment point by cutting just before it. When it comes to cutting, if you trim something and it don't fit, you can always remove more material, right? But you can't put it back. So if you do it like this and it don't fit, we'll cut this whole piece off. But with this plastic, it's relatively thin. You could probably use a utility knife if you're careful and deliberate, a pair of snips, Dremel tool. I have my multi-tool here, and that's how I'm going to cut it. Got the panel back into position now. Fits great. And what we can do is simply just reinstall this the opposite way that we removed it. With that done, if you did happen to lower your spare tire, feel free to go ahead and raise that back up into position. But with that said, that will do it for our look at and our installation of the CURT Trailer Hitch Receiver on our 2023 Ford Maverick.